Okay, really important topic here. I just tried doing one and I was at 24 minutes. I'm going to try to blast through this a little quicker, and then if you have questions or comments, get back to me and I'll do some parts of it more in detail. But this is kind of a 30,000 foot view on top hand grip and stick length. So incorrect stick length is like in the picture here. Shouldn't have any knob sticking out the top of that hand there. Most young players do have this. Why we don't want that? This is what a glove should look like. The top of the stick should always be buried inside of the glove, and players will generally rotate up on top, and that's why we get the hole in the glove like this. Big issue, and I've done this in the past too, is putting way too much tape on the top of the stick. What that does is let the players have free rein as to where they want to put their hand, and it's generally not right up at the top. The tape job on the right side here, we hope that players are going to have their hand where the tape is and keep them up high. And here's just another way of doing it. You can actually take and put a knob on the bottom of it, so the hand actually has to stay up above that. We want to force hands to be on top with no butt sticking out. That's a major correction for young players. Why we want this? It's anatomically correct. The fingers should be pointing down at the ice and the stick should be at a 45. Another common error is hand rolled over too far. You can see the V between the thumb and the pointer finger is on the big side, or the flat, the big larger side of the stick, where it should be like this guy has over here on the right. His V is down the skinny side of the stick. So that's a major one with kids, is they always want to have that hand rolled forward. Stance, top hand grip, everything goes together. This player's got bad stance. He's standing up straight, and you can see where the hand is. The hand is rolled over, like in the last picture, the wrong way. If you asked him to get in a stance right now, guaranteed that hand would just stay right on the pants here. It wouldn't be able to get off. So top hand away, high elbow. This is really important, getting players to understand that little scarecrow arm, or play like you have your brother in a headlock. When they get that, they start figuring out that that's their playmaking space, and they can do a lot more dynamic things with their hand off of their hip. So we call it scarecrow arm, or take your helmet and ram it through under their arm and say, put your brother in a headlock. Play like you got your brother in a headlock. So this one, the player in red does a pretty good job. He's got a good grip and a good top elbow. You can just see the difference in grips here. This player's got that the player in white has the rolled over hand, where this player's got a pretty good hand, same as Dreisaitl in that picture. Another good top hand is a little bit rolled. Top hand is a little bit rolled over too far ahead, but the elbow is really good. Here's some just some things that would be corrections if you're working with young players. So you can see this player, everything is welded. The arm is right against the body, and the top hand is rolled and right on the hip. So we'd want to get that arm out a little bit and hand hanging off of the hip. And it's usually a crutch. When players start, they don't have the leg strength to get into a proper hockey stance and stay balanced like doing a wall sit, so they naturally default to putting their hand in there, so when they get into a hockey stance they can balance and take all the weight off of their legs. And over here, the girl in the white, you can see top hand is a mess. It's rolled over completely wrong, and butt end is poking up and out, and no knee bend. So you can see the corrections are pretty minor at this level. I mean, they're really important. There's probably nothing more important in a player's hockey career than to get these things right off the start, but a lot of times we don't identify them and don't do a good job of really breaking them down and holding the kids accountable, or finding ways to get their hands off their hip and their eyes up and knees bent. Again, just another example of good top hand, scarecrow arm, brother in a headlock. You could take and put a head right through there. So the exception to the rule with this is if you can get the players to get that arm out there, it's good, but in puck protection situations, you can see where McDavid here is trying to attack the hand. So if the hand was hanging out in that position of scarecrow arm, it's vulnerable. So there's a time and a place that players have to shift that hand across and get it tucked in so it's hidden. So never say never, never say always, but you want to be able to get them to move those hands and be dynamic with it. This one you can see again, it's a puck protection. McDavid goes inline hands all the time. So he takes his hand off of his regular hip and puts it on his other hip, which allows him to go inline hands and protect. So it's a protection mechanism right here. If his hand was hanging in this area, it'd be really vulnerable to being bumped or checked. So dynamic top hand should travel all the way around a player's belt. And here's an example of playing off balance or playing behind heels off the inside foot. So shoulders are turned opposite of skates and top hand is punched way off of its regular hip, right? The regular hip is where the red arrow is, where that hand generally is, and that top hand is punched way across, and that's being able to make dynamic plays across your body. You can't do that without a good top hand. Just another example of shooting, top hand pulling in, bottom hand pushing forward. Zuccarello is great at this. He's got a good top hand. And here's one thing that kind of got going on the last video, but if you've got a good top hand, it doesn't matter the length of the stick. I just did an experiment with it. I took a stick that was 6 inches longer than what I've used since I was 14 years old. Different curve, different lie, went out, and after about half hour, 45 minutes, I could shoot fine with it because I adjusted my top hand and the top hand made the adjustments for it rather than going and cutting the stick off. Because if you can think about it in this way, is Zuccarello uses a long stick, so he has to put his hand up here in order to control it. If his stick was a little longer, well, his hand would be there. A little shorter, his hand would be there. If it was a little shorter, his hand would be there. And maybe this bottom hand slides a little bit to make those corrections. But if you've got good hands and you've got the proper techniques where your hand isn't welded in one place, it doesn't matter what lie or what length of stick you use because the hands make the adjustments for it. But so many people put a band-aid on a broken arm and just cut the stick off and make adjustments that way. And a lot of the changes in this theory too is because of the different shots that are happening. A lot of shots off the inside foot. Now more goals are scored in the NHL off the inside foot than the outside foot, so you can see the benefits of this shot, and it's in some of my other videos. Toes stay forward, you don't have to rotate your body, and the power comes from top hand and bottom hand, you working like a lever, bottom hand pushing forward or forward and down, top hand pulling in is where all the power is created on these shots. And again, good example of scarecrow arm or brother in a headlock, top hands pulling in, bottom hands pushing forward, elbow is high. Kessel's really good at this stuff when he's coming down on his off wing. He can go cross ice or shoot because he gets that top hand way off of his hips. That hip is over here, and look where his top hand ends up, and his shoulders are turning. Skates continue to go forwards, but yet he can make plays across his body because of that top hand being punched out and off the hip. So that's a quick synopsis on it. It usually turns into about 20 or 30 minutes when I'm doing these in a classroom because people's ears generally perk up. I think it's a really important subject. And with the young kids, the under 6 for sure, basic hockey stance where they're getting down low, their head and chest are up, and they've got their hand off of their hips is going to do wonders for them going forward. Don't worry about stride length and too much technical teaching with them that age. It's just the basics. It's the eyes and chest up all the time. Get them to start forgetting about looking at the puck, make them glance around, make them see the environment. Yeah, and it actually does build their legs a little bit when you can just get them into hockey stance before they start a drill. So, whatever your terminology is, we use sit on a bench, head and chest up, hand off hip, go. So then they get into that hockey stance before they start their drill, and then they're always getting that little bit of exercise by doing a half squat and then a explosive start. So if you have any more questions on this, feel free to give me a a message on it. I can break it down into pieces because there is a lot of information here to cover. I kind of whizzed through it, but hope you find it helpful and interesting. Feel free to leave a comment. Thanks.